The medical room was cold and white. Commander Zexthul sat in a chair that was too small for his large body. His 4 eyes moved around the room like he was looking for danger. The scars on his blue skin told stories of many battles. Some were old and faded. Others were still pink and fresh. Dr. Velnara sat across from him. She had 2 eyes like humans did, but her skin was green and smooth. She held a small recording device in her hands. Her job was to talk to soldiers who had seen too much war. She helped them feel better by letting them tell their stories. "Commander Zexthul," she said in a soft voice, "thank you for coming today. I know this is hard for you." Zexthul's 4 eyes looked at her. 2 were focused on her face. The other 2 kept watching the door. "I came because my doctors said I must. They say I have problems in my head from the war." "The Third Galactic War was terrible for everyone," Dr. Velnara said. "You fought for 3 years. You saw many battles. It is normal to have problems after such things." "Normal." Zexthul repeated the word like it tasted bad. Nothing about that war was normal, especially not the humans. Dr. Velnara leaned forward. A little. Other soldiers had talked about humans before. They always got upset when they did. "Would you like to tell me about the humans?" Zexthul was quiet for a long time. His breathing got faster. One of his hands started to shake. "They are not like us, not like any species in the galaxy. When I first heard about them, I thought they were just another weak race from a small planet." "Earth," Dr. Velnara said. "Yes, Earth. A world with too much water and too much gravity. We all thought they would be easy to defeat if they ever caused trouble. They were new to space travel. Their weapons were simple. Their ships were slow." Zexthul stopped talking and stared at the wall. "But you were wrong," Dr. Velnara said gently. "We were all wrong." Zexthul's voice was very quiet now. "The first time I saw humans fight was at Proxima Station. The Vorth had attacked the station. With 3 ships, we had 1 ship to defend it. The station commander called for help, but the nearest fleet was 2 days away." Dr. Velnara wrote notes on her pad. "What happened?" "A human ship arrived first. Just 1 ship with maybe 50 soldiers on it. The Vorth had 300 fighters. Any smart commander would have run away or waited for more help. But the humans did something else." Zexthul stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships moved slowly through space around the medical station. Their captain was named Jake Morrison. I met him later. He was not very tall and he smiled too much. He looked like he thought war was fun. He attacked with just 50 soldiers? He did more than attack. He planned something that no military school teaches. While the Vorth were busy shooting at the station, Morrison sent half his soldiers in small ships around the back. The other half went straight at the biggest Vorth ship. Dr. Velnara looked confused. "That sounds like suicide." "That is what I thought too. But humans think different than us." Morrison knew the Vorth would focus on the soldiers coming straight at them, so the soldiers going around the back could get close without being seen. Zexthul sat back down. His hands were shaking, more now. "I was on the station watching through the cameras. I saw the humans in the direct attack get shot at by hundreds of weapons. Their small ships were hit again and again. Some exploded, but the ones that were still flying kept coming." "Did they retreat?" "Humans do not retreat. That is what I learned that day. One of their ships lost its engine, but the pilot kept flying toward the enemy. His name was Lieutenant Amy Sullivan. Her ship was on fire, but she flew it right into the side of a Vorth ship." Dr. Velnara stopped writing. "She killed herself? She saved everyone else. Her ship explosion made a hole in the Vorth ship. The human soldiers from the back attack flew through that hole and took over the ship from inside. In 10 minutes, they controlled the biggest enemy ship." Zexthul rubbed his forehead with 2 of his hands. "But that was not the strangest part. After the battle, I went to help with the wounded. There was a human medic named Lisa Hayes. She had burns on her arms and legs from plasma fire. Any other species would be in a medical bed for weeks. What was she doing? Working. She was treating wounded soldiers and fixing broken equipment. When I told her she needed medical care, she laughed. She said her job was to help others, not worry about herself. Dr. Velnara put down her pen. How badly was she hurt? Bad enough that most species would die. But she worked for 6 more hours before she let anyone treat her wounds. And while she worked, she was happy. She sang songs and told jokes to the wounded soldiers. Zexthel looked at Dr. Velnara with all 4 eyes. Do you understand what I'm telling you? This human was dying, but she was more worried about other people than herself, and she was happy while doing it. That does seem unusual. Unusual, Zexthel laughed, but it was not a happy sound. I have fought beside Krithari warriors who are famous for being brave. I have seen Zenith soldiers who never show fear. But humans are different. They do not just ignore pain and death. They seem to enjoy fighting against impossible odds, Doctor. Velnara picked up her pen again. Tell me more about Captain Morrison. After the battle, I talked to him. I asked him why he attacked when he was so outnumbered. He said something I will never forget. He said that humans learned long ago that running away just means you have to fight the same battle later, but from a worse position. That sounds reasonable, maybe to you. But then he said something else. He said that humans do not fight just to win battles. They fight to make sure their enemies never want to fight them again. Zexthel stood up again and walked around the room. I thought he was just talking big. Many young soldiers do that after their first victory. But I was wrong. Over the next 3 years, I saw humans fight in dozens of battles. They never ran away. Not once. Never. Never. I saw human soldiers with broken bones keep fighting. I saw them share their food with wounded enemies. I saw them cry when their friends died, then smile when they talked about getting revenge. Dr. Velnara looked at her notes. It sounds like they cared deeply about their fellow soldiers. They cared about everyone, even us aliens who fought beside them. During one battle, a human named Corporal Mike Brown carried me to safety when I was wounded. He did not know me well. We were not friends, but he risked his life to save mine. Zexthel sat down again. That night I asked him why he saved me. He said it was because we were on the same side. That was enough for him. That shows good character. It shows something beyond good character. It shows that humans think differently than every other species in the galaxy. We fight for our families, our planets, our governments. Humans fight for ideas. They fight for people they have never met. They fight for what they think is right. Dr. Velnara looked at the time. They had been talking for an hour, but Zexthel seemed like he was just getting started. Commander, would you like to continue this tomorrow? We have covered a lot today. Zexthel looked at her with tired eyes. Doctor, I have been trying to forget these stories for 2 years, but they will not leave my head. Maybe if I tell them all to you, they will finally let me sleep. We can continue if you feel up to it. I need to tell you about Altair Prime. That is where I really learned what humans are capable of. That is where I saw them do things that still give me nightmares. Doctor, Velnara saved her recording and started a new file. She had a feeling that Commander Zexthel's story was just beginning. Dr. Velnara started the new recording. Commander Zexthel sat very still in his chair. His 4 eyes were all looking at the floor now. She could see his breathing was not normal. It was too fast and too shallow. Commander, tell me about Altair Prime when you are ready, she said softly. Zexthel was quiet for a very long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. It sounded older and more tired. Altair Prime was where I learned that humans do not understand the word impossible. He lifted his head and looked at her. The colony had 50,000 people living there. Families, children, old people. When the Vorth attacked, they brought 200 ships. We had 30 ships to defend the colony. Those are terrible odds. Any normal commander would have evacuated the colony and run away. But the human general in charge was named Rick Parker. When I told him we should retreat, he looked at me like I had said something funny. Zexthel stood up and walked to the window again. General Parker was an old man. His hair was white and his face had many lines, but his eyes were young and angry. He said that running away would just mean the Vorth would chase us and kill everyone anyway. What did he plan to do? He planned to win with 30 ships against 200. He called all the commanders to a meeting and showed us his plan. It was crazy. It required everything to go perfectly. If even one small part failed, we would all die, Dr. Velnara wrote in her notes. What was the plan? The Vorth had surrounded the planet, but they had to land soldiers to take the colony. Parker wanted to let them land, then cut off their supply ships. Without supplies, the ground soldiers would be stuck on the planet. Zexthul turned away from the window. To do this, someone had to destroy the Vorth supply depot. It was heavily guarded and far behind enemy lines. Getting there would be almost impossible. Getting back would be completely impossible. Did anyone volunteer? Before Parker could even ask, a human sergeant named Tony Brooks raised his hand. He said his demolition team could do the job. Parker asked him if he understood that it was a one-way mission. Brooks smiled and said that just meant they did not have to worry about saving fuel for the trip home. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. He knew he would die? He knew. His whole team knew. 12 humans volunteered to die so that 50,000 colonists could live. And they were happy about it. Zexthul sat back down. His hands were shaking again. I was assigned to help with the mission. I flew Brooks and his team to the drop point. During the flight, they were laughing and telling stories. One of them, a young woman named Carol Davis, was showing pictures of her family to the others. Were they scared? If they were scared, they did not show it. Carol talked about her little brother back on Earth. She said she hoped he would grow up to be a soldier like her. Another soldier named Pete Johnson was writing a letter to his parents. Zexthul rubbed his eyes with two of his hands. I asked Brooks why they were so calm. He said that being scared would not help them complete the mission. He said fear was just another enemy to defeat. What happened during the mission? They succeeded. Brooks and his team destroyed the supply depot and took out 3 guard ships, but the cost was terrible. I watched through long-range scanners as their ship was shot down. All 12 humans died. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. How did the other humans react? That is what still bothers me. The other humans were sad, yes, but they were not surprised. It was like they had expected their friends to die. Staff Sergeant Maria Lopez, who was Brooks's second in command, just picked up his mission files and kept working. Zexthul stood up again and began walking around the room. Lopez did not cry. She did not get angry. She organized the next phase of the plan like nothing had happened. When I asked her how she could be so calm, she said that Brooks and his team had done their job. Now it was her job to make sure their deaths meant something. That seems very cold. That is what I thought too. But I was wrong. Later that night, I saw Lopez sitting alone in her quarters. She was looking at a picture of Brooks and his team. She was crying, but she was doing it quietly so no one would see. Dr. Velnara made more notes. So humans do grieve. They grieve, but they do not let grief stop them from fighting. The next day, Lopez led another mission that was just as dangerous as the one that killed Brooks. She took 8 volunteers to attack a Vorth communication center. Zexthul stopped walking and looked directly at Dr. Velnara. Do you know what she said when I asked her why she was risking her life again so soon after losing her friends? She said that Brooks and his team had opened a door for them. It would be an insult to their memory if she did not walk through it. Did her mission succeed? It succeeded, but Lopez was badly wounded. A plasma blast hit her in the chest and burned through her armor. Any other species would have died immediately, but Lopez stayed conscious long enough to complete the mission and get her team to safety. Dr. Velnara looked concerned. Did she survive? She survived, but she was in medical care for weeks. The doctor said she would never fight again. Her lung was damaged and her heart was weak. But 3 months later, she was back on duty. Zexthul sat down heavily in his chair. I visited her in the medical ward. She was connected to machines that helped her breathe. She could barely talk. But when I asked her how she was feeling, she said she was frustrated that she was not helping with the war. She wanted to keep fighting even though she was dying. She wanted to keep fighting because her friends had died. She said that every day she spent in a medical bed was a day she was not honoring their sacrifice. Dr. Velnara put down her pen. Commander, this must be very difficult for you to remember. It gets worse. During the siege, I saw many more humans volunteer for missions that meant certain death. Pilot Commander Steve Adams flew his damaged fighter into a Vorth dreadnought after his life support failed. Communications Officer Betty Clark stayed at her post coordinating evacuations even as the command center collapsed around her. Zexthol's voice got very quiet. But the worst part was not watching them die. The worst part was watching how the other humans reacted. Every time someone died, the survivors got more determined. It was like death made them stronger instead of weaker. How did the siege end? We won, but the cost was terrible. Of the 3,000 human soldiers who defended Altair Prime, only 800 survived. But those 800 had defeated an enemy force that was 10 times larger. Dr. Velnara looked at her notes. She had filled many pages. How did this affect you personally? I started to understand that humans are not like other species. When my people fight, we fight to protect what we love. When humans fight, they fight to destroy what they hate, and they hate anyone who threatens innocent people. Zexthol looked at his hands. After Altair Prime, I was promoted and assigned to work more closely with human forces. I thought I understood them after the siege. But I was wrong again. The worst was yet to come. What do you mean? I mean that everything I had seen so far was just humans fighting normally. I had not yet seen what they do when they get angry. I had not seen their psychological warfare. Dr. Velnara checked the time. They had been talking for 2 hours. But Zexthol seemed like he needed to keep going. Humans have 2 different ways of fighting, Zexthol continued. One way is what I saw at Proxima Station and Altair Prime. That is when they fight to protect people. But there is another way. That is when they fight to punish enemies who have done terrible things. Can you give me an example? The campaign on Rigel 4. That is where I learned that humans do not just defeat their enemies. They break them. They make them afraid to ever fight again. Zexthul looked at Dr. Velnara with all 4 of his eyes. Doctor, have you ever seen someone lose their mind from fear? Have you ever seen an entire army surrender without firing a single shot because they were too terrified to fight? No, I have not. I have, and it was humans who made it happen. Dr. Velnara noticed that Commander Zexthul was breathing very fast now. His 4 eyes kept moving around the room like he expected danger to appear at any moment. She could see sweat on his blue skin even though the room was cold. Commander, would you like to take a break? She asked gently. No, Zexthul said quickly. I need to tell you about Rigel 4. I need someone to understand what I saw there, what the humans did there. He stood up and walked to the corner of the room. The Vorth had taken over Rigel 4 6 months before we arrived. They had built 3 large military bases and brought in 50,000 soldiers. The planet was completely under their control. Dr. Velnara waited for him to continue. She could see that this memory was especially hard for him. The human commander was Major Dan Carter. He was different from the other human officers I had met. He was very quiet and he watched everything. His eyes were cold like winter ice. Zexthul turned to face her. Carter did not plan to attack the Vorth bases directly. He said that would waste too many lives. Instead, he was going to make the Vorth want to leave on their own. How could he do that? Psychological warfare. Carter had studied the Vorth for years. He knew how their minds worked. He knew what scared them. Zexthul sat back down but kept moving in his chair like he could not get comfortable. Carter had specialists working for him. There was Corporal Julie Martin, who was an expert with computers. Sergeant Kevin White knew how to make special equipment. Together, they created something terrible. What did they create? Fear. Pure fear. They hacked into the Vorth communication systems and began broadcasting sounds into their bases at night. Human war songs. Battle cries. Screams from old battles. Dr. Velnara looked confused. Just sounds? You do not understand. The Vorth have very sensitive hearing. These sounds were designed to make them feel afraid and confused. But that was just the beginning. Zexthul stood up again and began walking back and forth. Carter's team would sneak close to Vorth patrols at night. They would leave behind small items. A human military badge here. a piece of torn uniform there. Sometimes they would leave pictures. Pictures of what? Pictures of dead Vorth soldiers from other battles. Pictures of destroyed Vorth ships. Pictures of human soldiers smiling while standing over enemy bodies. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. That seems very cruel. It was cruel, but it was also very effective. The Vorth soldiers began to believe that humans were everywhere, watching them, hunting them. They started to shoot at shadows. They stopped going out alone. Zexathul's voice got quieter. But the worst part was what Carter did with the recordings. He had videos of human special forces operations from other planets. Videos that showed humans doing impossible things. What kind of impossible things? I saw one video where a single human soldier named Sergeant Paul Davis attacked a Vorth patrol of 12 soldiers. He used only primitive weapons, a knife, a club, his bare hands. Zexthul stopped walking and looked directly at Dr. Velnara. Davis killed 11 of the 12 Vorth soldiers. He let the last one live on purpose. He wanted that soldier to go back and tell his commanders what he had seen. One human against 12 trained soldiers. Davis moved like a ghost. He appeared from shadows and disappeared again. The Vorth soldiers could not hit him with their weapons. They were too afraid and too confused. By the time they understood what was happening, most of them were already dead. Dr. Velnara put down her pen. How is that possible? Humans train for this their whole lives. They study every form of combat. They learn to fight in every situation. Davis was not just a soldier, he was a weapon. Zexthul sat down again but immediately got back up. Carter showed these videos to captured Vorth soldiers. He would play them over and over until the prisoners were too scared to think clearly. Then he would release them back to their own forces. He released enemy prisoners. He wanted them to spread fear among their own troops. And it worked. Within 2 weeks, entire Vorth units were refusing to leave their bases. They were afraid that humans were hiding everywhere, waiting to attack. Dr. Velnara made notes quickly. What happened? Next, Carter escalated his campaign. His team began staging fake attacks. They would set off explosions near Vorth bases but never actually attack. They wanted the Vorth to think they were under assault, but when they came out to fight, there would be no one there. Zexthul rubbed his forehead with 2 hands. The Vorth soldiers began to crack under the pressure. They stopped sleeping. They started shooting at their own shadows. Some of them began to believe that humans could become invisible. Could the humans become invisible? No, but they were very good at hiding and moving without being seen. Carter had learned this from studying ancient human military tactics, something called guerrilla warfare. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. How long did this continue? 3 months. For 3 months, Carter's team of only 20 humans terrorized 50,000 Vorth soldiers. The enemy never saw more than 1 or 2 humans at a time, but they believed they were surrounded by thousands. Zexthul's hands were shaking badly now. I was there when Carter finally revealed himself to the Vorth commander. He walked into the main enemy base alone and unarmed. He wanted to negotiate. That sounds very dangerous. It should have been suicide, but the Vorth commander was too afraid to arrest him. Carter sat down at the negotiation table and smiled. He said he had a message for all Vorth forces in the sector. Dr. Velnara waited for him to continue. Carter said that what had happened on Rigel 4 was just a small example of what humans could do. He said that if the Vorth continued to fight, every planet they occupied would become like Rigel 4. Every Vorth soldier would live in constant fear. Zexthul looked at the floor. Then Carter showed the Vorth commander something that made my blood freeze. He had files on every Vorth base in the sector. He knew their locations, their defenses, their supply schedules. He had been planning to do to all of them what he had done on Rigel 4. How did he get that information? His intelligence officer was Captain Ellen Foster. She was even more frightening than Carter. Foster could hack into any computer system. She could intercept any communication. She knew things about the Vorth that their own commanders did not know. Dr. Velnara wrote more notes. What was the result of the negotiation? The Vorth commander agreed to evacuate all forces from the sector within 1 month. 50,000 soldiers surrendered to 20 humans without firing a single shot. Zexthul stood up and walked to the window. But that was not the end. Carter made the Vorth commander send a message to all other Vorth forces. The message said that humans were not normal enemies. It said that fighting humans meant accepting that every day would be filled with fear, and every night would be filled with nightmares. Did other Vorth forces receive this message? They did, and many of them began to withdraw from human territory without being asked. The psychological campaign on Rigel 4 ended conflicts on dozens of other planets. Dr. Velnara looked at her notes. She had filled many pages. Commander, how did witnessing this affect you? I began to understand that humans fight on 2 levels. They fight with weapons and ships like everyone else. But they also fight with ideas and emotions. They attack the mind as well as the body. Zexthul turned away from the window. I realized that when humans decide to go to war, they do not just plan to defeat their enemies. They plan to make sure those enemies never want to fight anyone ever again. That seems very thorough. It is more than thorough. It is terrifying. Because it means that humans do not see war as just another political tool. They see it as a way to change how other species think and behave. Dr. Velnara checked the time. Commander, we have been talking for 3 hours. Are you sure you want to continue? I must continue, because what I saw on Rigel 4 was nothing compared to what happened during the Honor Guard incident. That is when I learned what humans do when they become truly angry. Zexthul looked at her with all 4 eyes. Doctor, everything I have told you so far happened when humans were being professional soldiers. But there is something else. Something that happens when humans stop being professional and start being personal. What do you mean? I mean what happens when you hurt someone a human cares about. I mean what happens when you make a human angry instead of just making them fight. Dr. Velnara saved her recording and started a new file. She had a feeling that the worst parts of Commander Zexthul's story were still to come. Dr. Velnara watched Commander Zexthul carefully. He was shaking all over now. His 4 eyes kept blinking very fast. She had never seen anyone this upset during an interview. Commander, we can stop here if you need to, she said. No, Zexthul whispered. I have carried this story for 2 years. It wakes me up every night. Maybe if I tell it to someone, it will finally leave me alone. He walked to the wall and leaned against it like he was too tired to stand on his own. The Honor Guard incident happened 6 months before the war ended. I was assigned to protect Ambassador Threndal during peace talks with the Vorth. Dr. Velnara prepared a new page in her notes. What was your role? I was the security coordinator for the alien forces. We had 20 guards from different species. The humans only sent 8 soldiers, but their commander said 8 was enough. Zexthul closed his eyes. The human commander was Captain Frank Turner. He was older than most human soldiers, maybe 40 years old. He had gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. What were the other humans like? There was Sergeant Carol Johnson. She was very young, maybe 25. She had bright blue eyes and she smiled often. Corporal Matt Rogers was quiet and serious. He checked his weapons 5 times every hour. Zexthul opened his eyes and looked at Dr. Velnara. There were 5 other humans too. Private Lisa Bell, who was their medic. Corporal Dave Hunt, who handled communications. Private Jenny Adams, who was an explosives expert. Sergeant Bob Miller, who was their sniper. And Private Andy Clark, who was their technical specialist. That seems like a small group for such an important mission. I thought so too. I asked Captain Turner if he wanted more soldiers. He said that 8 humans were worth 50 soldiers from any other species. At the time, I thought he was just being proud. Dr. Velnara made notes about the team composition. What happened during the peace talks? The talks were going well. Ambassador Threndal was very skilled at negotiations. It looked like we might actually end the war without more fighting. Then everything went wrong. Zexthul pushed himself away from the wall and began walking around the room again. Vorth extremists attacked the diplomatic compound. They had been planning it for weeks. 50 heavily armed soldiers came through the main gate while more attacked from the roof. How did the security forces respond? We followed standard protocol. All alien guards fell back to defensive positions around the ambassador. We built barriers and waited for reinforcements. It was the correct military response. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. But the humans did something different? The humans did the opposite of everything we were taught. Instead of falling back, they advanced toward the enemy. Captain Turner told his team to split up and attack from different directions. Zexthul stopped walking and stared at the floor. I was watching through security cameras. I saw Sergeant Johnson run directly into enemy fire. She was not wearing heavy armor like the Vorth soldiers, just light combat gear. That sounds very dangerous. It should have been suicide. The Vorth had plasma rifles and explosive weapons. But Johnson moved like she could see the future. She dodged weapons fire that should have killed her. She rolled behind cover just before explosions went off. Dr. Velnara wrote quickly. Was she hit? She was hit multiple times. I saw plasma bolts burn through her armor and into her shoulder and leg. But she did not slow down. She kept moving toward the enemy like the pain meant nothing to her. Zexthul's voice got very quiet. While she was attacking, Johnson was also carrying wounded diplomats to safety. She would grab an injured alien with one hand and shoot at enemies with the other hand, all while her own blood was running down her armor. How many diplomats did she save? 7. She carried 7 wounded aliens to safety while fighting off dozens of enemy soldiers. By the time she reached the safe room, she had lost so much blood that she could barely stand. Dr. Velnara looked concerned. Did she survive? She survived, but that is not the important part. The important part is what she did next. Even though she was badly wounded, she immediately started treating the injured diplomats. She ignored her own injuries completely. Zexthul sat down in his chair but immediately stood up again. I went to help her with the wounded. When I told her she needed medical attention, she said that her job was to protect others, not herself. She said she could die later, after everyone else was safe. What about the other humans? Corporal Rogers was fighting in the main corridor. His weapon had been destroyed by enemy fire, but he kept fighting with a piece of broken metal. I watched him hold off 3 Vorth soldiers using just a sharp piece of debris. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. How is that possible? Rogers was fast and smart. He used the environment as a weapon. He broke lights to create darkness. He used furniture as shields. He turned the corridor into a trap for the enemy soldiers. Zexthul's hand started shaking again. But the worst part was watching Captain Turner. He had been separated from his team and surrounded by enemy forces. Any normal soldier would have surrendered or tried to escape. What did Captain Turner do? He smiled. I was watching through a security camera, and I saw him smile at the enemy soldiers. Then he pulled out a grenade and activated it. Dr. Velnara dropped her pen. He killed himself? He killed himself and took 6 enemy soldiers with him. But before he died, he used his radio to give orders to his team. His last words were instructions on how to complete the mission. Zexthul walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the glass. Captain Turner died laughing. He was happy that his death would help save the diplomats. He was happy that his team could finish the job. How did his team react? That is what still haunts me. The other humans heard their captain die over the radio. They heard him laugh as he killed himself. And they did not stop fighting. They did not get emotional. They just followed his final orders. Dr. Velnara picked up her pen with shaking hands. What were his orders? To secure the compound and protect the diplomats at all costs. So that is what they did. Sergeant Johnson continued fighting even though she was bleeding badly. Corporal Rogers cleared the main corridor room by room. The Yuck. Others worked together to eliminate the remaining attackers. Zexthul turned away from the window. Within 1 hour, 7 humans had defeated 50 Vorth soldiers. The attackers were all dead or captured. The diplomats were safe. The peace talks could continue. That seems like a victory. It was a victory, but the cost was terrible. Captain Turner was dead. Sergeant Johnson was badly wounded. 3 other humans had injuries that would have killed most species. Dr. Velnara looked at her notes. How did the surviving humans behave after the battle? That is what I will never understand. They did not celebrate their victory. They did not mourn their captain immediately. They filed their mission reports. They secured the area. They treated the wounded. Zexathol sat down heavily in his chair. I found Corporal Rogers cleaning his weapon in the armory. His hands were covered in blood, but he was calmly maintaining his equipment. When I asked him how he was feeling, he said the mission was successful and that was all that mattered. When did they grieve for their captain? Later that night, I walked past their quarters. The door was open and I could see inside. All 7 surviving humans were sitting together in silence. Some were crying. Others were just staring at the wall. Dr. Velnara made more notes. So they do feel emotions. They feel emotions, but they control them completely. They grieve when the mission is over. They celebrate when the war is won. But during the fighting, they are like machines that think and feel but never let feelings control their actions. Zexthul looked at Dr. Velnara with all 4 eyes. Do you understand what I am telling you? These humans watched their friend and leader die. They were wounded and outnumbered, but they completed their mission perfectly. That shows remarkable discipline. It shows something beyond discipline. It shows that humans can separate their emotions from their duty completely. They can watch their best friends die and keep fighting. They can be hurt and scared and angry, but still do exactly what needs to be done. Dr. Velnara put down her pen. Commander, how did this experience change you? I began to understand that humans are not just good soldiers. They are perfect soldiers. They do not let fear or pain or grief stop them from doing their job. Zexthol's voice became very quiet. But I also learned something else that night. I learned what happens when humans stop being professional soldiers and start being angry humans. What do you mean? The next day, we received intelligence about who had planned the attack on the diplomatic compound. The surviving humans asked permission to hunt down the extremist leaders. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. Were they given permission? They were given permission. And that is when I saw what humans do when they are not just fighting to complete a mission. That is when I saw what they do when they are fighting for revenge. Zexthul stood up and walked to the door. Doctor, everything I have told you so far happened when humans were being professional. But there is one more thing I must tell you. One more thing that will help you understand why I can never sleep peacefully again. What is that, Commander? I must tell you about the final battle of the war. I must tell you about what humans do when they stop holding back. Dr. Velnara could see that Commander Zexthul was at his breaking point. His 4 eyes were red and tired. His whole body was shaking. But he seemed determined to finish his story. Commander, this is the last part. Take your time, she said gently. Zexthul nodded and sat down. The final battle happened 3 months after the Honor Guard incident. The Vorth had gathered their remaining forces for one last attack. They brought everything they had left. 500 ships and 200,000 soldiers. He paused and took a deep breath. Our forces were much smaller. We had 100 ships and 50,000 soldiers, but 20,000 of those soldiers were humans. Dr. Velnara prepared her notes. Who was in command? Admiral Grace Bennett commanded the human fleet. She was different from the other human officers I had met. She was very calm and spoke softly, but her eyes were like fire. Zexthul looked at the wall. Admiral Bennett had read the reports about the Honor Guard incident. She knew that Captain Turner had died protecting diplomats. She knew that her people had been attacked while trying to make peace. How did this affect her? She called a meeting of all commanders. When she spoke, her voice was still soft and calm, but her words were like ice. She said that the Vorth had shown they could not be trusted. She said they had proven they did not want peace. Dr. Velnara wrote quickly. What did she plan to do? She said that if the Vorth wanted war, then they would get war, but not the kind of war they expected. She said the humans were done being professional soldiers. Now, they were going to be themselves. Zexthul stood up and walked to the window. I did not understand what she meant at first, but I learned during the battle. I learned what humans are really like when they stop holding back. What happened during the battle? The Vorth attacked our defensive line with everything they had. Their plan was simple. Use their superior numbers to overwhelm us quickly. It should have worked. Zexthal's voice got quieter. But the humans did something I had never seen before. They did not wait for orders. They did not follow standard tactics. They just fought. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. What do you mean? I mean, they fought like wild animals, but with all their intelligence and training intact. Lieutenant Commander Joe Miller was commanding 3 different damaged ships at the same time. His own ship had lost life support, but he kept fighting. From the bridge, even though he could not breathe properly, how could he command 3 ships? Miller had connected his brain to the computer systems. He was using technology that should have killed him, but he made it work through pure willpower. He was controlling ship movements and weapon systems with his thoughts. Zexthal turned away from the window. Engineer Chief Nancy Brown kept damaged reactors running by doing things that should have been impossible. She was crawling through radiation-filled engine rooms with no protection. She was welding broken pipes while plasma fire burned around her. Was she not afraid of dying? She was afraid of failing. I heard her talking to her team over the radio. She said that every minute their ship stayed operational was another minute their friends could keep fighting. Dr. Velnara made more notes. What about the ground forces? Staff Sergeant Roy Campbell led a ground assault that broke every rule of military strategy. He took 500 human soldiers and attacked a Vorth force of 10,000. Without air support, without heavy weapons. Zexthal sat back down. Campbell's soldiers moved like ghosts through the battlefield. They used the environment as a weapon. They turned every building, every vehicle, every piece of debris into a trap for the enemy. How could 500 soldiers fight 10,000? Because they were not fighting like soldiers anymore. They were fighting like humans. They used tactics that no military school teaches. They did things that other species would never think of. Dr. Velnara looked confused. What kinds of things? Medic First Class Sandra King was treating wounded soldiers in the middle of battle. But she was also fighting. She would bandage a wound with one hand while shooting enemies with the other hand. She saved 30 lives and killed 20 enemy soldiers at the same time. Zexthal's hands started shaking again. But the most frightening thing was how they worked together. They did not need to talk to each other. They moved like they were all parts of the same organism. Can you give me an example? I watched a squad of 8 humans surround a Vorth position that had 40 defenders. The humans did not discuss their plan. They just moved. Each human knew exactly what the others would do. Dr. Velnara wrote quickly. What happened? The humans attacked from 8 different directions at exactly the same time. They moved like they had practiced this specific attack for years. But they had never worked together before that day. Zexthal stood up and began walking around the room. The Vorth soldiers were completely confused. They did not know which way to shoot. Every time they focused on one human, 3 others would attack from behind. Did the humans win? They won, but that is not the important part. The important part is how they won. They did not just defeat the enemy. They destroyed them completely. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. What do you mean? I mean that when the battle was over, there were no Vorth prisoners, no Vorth survivors. The humans had eliminated every enemy soldier in their sector. Zexthal stopped walking and looked directly at her. Doctor, in 3 years of war, I had never seen humans kill every enemy. They always left survivors. They always took prisoners. But not this time. Why was this battle different? Because this time they were angry. Really angry. The Vorth had attacked diplomats during peace talks. They had killed Captain Turner while he was trying to protect innocent people. Dr. Velnara put down her pen. So the humans were fighting for revenge? They were fighting for justice. But human justice is absolute. They decided that any species that would attack during peace negotiations could never be trusted. So they made sure the Vorth could never attack anyone again. Zexthal sat down heavily. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the entire Vorth fleet was destroyed. All 200,000 enemy soldiers were dead. The humans had won a complete victory. What were the human casualties? 7,000 humans died in that battle. But the remaining 13,000 had accomplished something that will be remembered forever. They had ended the Vorth threat permanently. Dr. Velnara made notes with shaking hands. How did this affect you personally? I finally understood what humans really are. They are not just another species that is good at fighting. They are something completely different. Zexthul looked at her with all four eyes. Other species fight to survive. Humans fight to win. And they will keep fighting until winning is the only possible outcome. What do you mean? I mean that humans do not accept defeat. Ever. If you hurt them, they will hurt you back 10 times worse. If you threaten their friends, they will destroy you completely. If you make them angry, they will never stop hunting you. Dr. Velnara looked at her notes. She had filled more pages than any previous interview. Commander, what is your final assessment of human warfare? Humans are not warriors. They are war itself. They do not just use violence as a tool. Violence is part of their nature, but they control it completely until they decide to let it free. Zexthul's voice became very quiet. Doctor, I have fought beside the bravest soldiers in the galaxy. I have seen species that are famous for their courage and skill. But humans are different from all of them. How are they different? Because when humans go to war, they do not fight to defeat their enemies. They fight to teach their enemies never to fight anyone ever again. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. What happened after the final battle? The war ended immediately. Every other hostile species in the sector surrendered within 1 week. They had all heard what happened to the Vorth. They all decided that fighting humans was not worth the risk. Zexthul stood up slowly. Admiral Bennett gave one speech after the battle. She said that humans preferred peace, but they were very good at war. She said that anyone who threatened innocent people would face the same fate as the Vorth. Did other species believe her? They believed her because they had seen the evidence. The Vorth fleet was completely gone, not damaged, not defeated, gone, as if it had never existed. Dr. Velnara closed her notebook. Commander, thank you for sharing your experiences. This has been very helpful for our research. Zexthul walked to the door, then turned back to look at her. Doctor, there is one more thing you should know. Something that all species in the galaxy should understand. What is that? Humans are the kindest, most generous people you will ever meet. They will share their food with strangers. They will risk their lives to save people they do not know. They will cry when they see others suffering. Dr. Velnara looked confused. But you have described them as terrifying warriors. That is exactly my point. Humans are capable of infinite kindness and infinite violence. The choice of which one you experience depends entirely on how you treat them and the people they care about. Zexthul opened the door. If you are peaceful, humans will be your best friends. But if you threaten innocent people, humans will become your worst nightmare. And they will never stop being your nightmare until you are no longer a threat to anyone.